Hey, in today's video, we're going to talk about home inspections and how are they different than home appraisals. When you're buying a house, getting a home inspection is often a critical thing to do. I'm Peter Lindquist with the Lindquist Team. I'm here with Travis Anderson, a dynamic realtor here in the Twin Cities of Minnesota. We're going to cover everything that you need to know about home inspections. And hey, if you like this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up. I really like that. And then, or feel free to subscribe to my channel, and certainly feel free to leave any questions in the comments below. Travis, how are you today?
I'm well today. How about yourself?
I'm doing just great. So we're going to talk about home inspections, which is really a big deal in the whole real estate transaction. Can you just start off by talking a little bit about home inspections? What are they? How are they different than appraisals?
Yeah, absolutely. So first and foremost, as a realtor, we always recommend home inspections, but you'll have to decide on if you're going to choose a home inspection at the time of purchase agreement. And then usually it's a timed contingency, Peter. What that means is that there's a specified time frame that as a home buyer we have to complete all of our inspections by. So it could be 3 days or 5 days or 7 days, and all of that is negotiable. Okay.
Can you tell me a little bit, what does a home inspection reveal? I mean, what do they report on?
How about I share with you my experience of what an inspector does and then how they reveal it. So generally speaking, a home inspector will show up to the home maybe an hour or 2 hours before we as buyers get there. They start on the exterior at the roof, and they're just doing a visual inspection of the roof. It isn't a roof inspection. They're just looking at it to see if they find evidence of curling shingles or aged shingles, evidence of possible water intrusion. And then they do the same thing around all the windows in the exterior foundation. So it's the same thing, just a walk around, and they're looking for evidence of, damaged siding, damaged windows, damaged trim, things like that. And then a really big issue in Minnesota specifically is water intrusion. Most homes, if you think about it, most homes have basements. Basements is just, I heard somebody say this, it's just a hole in the ground with rocks around it. And so water is prone to get into basements. And so an inspector will take a look at the foundation as well. Then when they get on the inside of the home, Peter, they're going to go to the highest level and they're going to check all of the outlets to make sure they're running well. They're going to look in all the ceiling areas to see if there's any evidence of water intrusion that they might have identified possibly outside. And that'll help them identify if it's actually happening on the inside. They'll poke their head in the attic, take pictures of stuff like that. They run water through all of the plumbing looking for leaks. They usually will open the windows and the doors, and they'll check the mechanicals. They'll make sure that the furnace is working and things like that. What an inspector, so high level, 30,000 foot view, it's a visual only, and they're looking for defects. And they're looking for defects with the structure and the major mechanicals. That would be the highest level answer.
And so I'm still in love with the house. What happens if they come back with, something major? Well, or for that matter, a bunch of things minor. What happens?
Yeah, great question. Most homes, you're going to have a bunch of things minor. Again, you're hiring the inspector to find defects. So even in new construction, as weird as it sounds, an inspector will notice things that you and I wouldn't notice. But what happens if there's a bunch of small things? It depends on if they would be considered a deal breaker. What I mean by that is for the buyer, are these issues so large in scope that you don't want to buy the home anymore? And if the answer to that is yes, then the buyer has the right to cancel during that period. If they choose to move forward, or let's say they're not deal breakers, but they're really concerned about it, then we would attempt to negotiate those items with the seller. Let me give you an exact example, Peter. So many times we'll have an inspector look at a furnace, okay? And the furnace might be burning not perfectly, and it's possible that it's recycling the carbon dioxide, converting it into carbon monoxide, which is a poisonous gas. And that's not uncommon for an inspector to find. Obviously, you don't want to buy a home where the furnace is potentially poisoning your family. And so we would negotiate that item with the seller. We would have the furnace serviced and certified by an HVAC technician instead of just having an inspector say, I think this is a problem. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so I get this question a lot is what's the difference between, I'm getting an appraisal on the house. I don't need an inspection. Tell me what's the difference.
Yeah, and then if you're doing an FHA appraisal, a lot of times it's called an appraisal inspection, right?
Yep.
Or the VA calls it a VA appraisal inspection. And so it is kind of confusing. The appraisal is a third party opinion of price. If you're getting an FHA or a VA loan, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Peter, but the appraiser will go through and make sure there isn't anything that's so blatantly obviously harmful, like a loose handrail or something like that. If you're holding onto a handrail walking down the stairs and that were to slip, you fall down the stairs and severely hurt yourself, right? So an appraiser will grab the handrail and kind of pull on it. But an appraiser they're not going on the roof. They're not checking for defects with the furnace or the electrical or the plumbing. They're not doing any of that. They're just walking around the home, taking measurements, taking photos of the condition, and then they're giving you an opinion of the price of that home. So an inspector gives you an opinion on the condition of the home, and the appraiser gives you an opinion on the price of the home.
Okay, yeah, great. Yeah, when it comes to FHA and VA, you actually sign a document. It's a required document that says an appraisal is not a home inspection. So there is a massive difference between the two. Tell me, what kind of cost? How much does it cost to have an inspector?
Yeah, so you're probably looking at $350 to $500 on average. And then let's go back to our furnace situation. Let's say that the inspector says, you should have an HVAC technician look at this furnace. We can ask the seller to do a repair, but if we need to further examine the furnace, we might have to pay a contractor to come out and take a look at that as well. So you're looking at $350 to $500 on average, I'd say, for your visual home inspection. And then depending on what's recommended from the inspector, you might spend a little more money. You might scope the sewer line, for example, if water's backing up. He might say, hey, we need to get the sewer line looked at. You might inspect the furnace. You might do a radon test, stuff like that. Each of those secondary tests are usually about $100 to $150, depending on the scope. But that's a pretty good estimate. I would say budget for $500. And then if there's any additional issues, you might spend another couple $100.
And how do I pay for it? I mean, is it cash? Can they take credit cards?
Yeah. Unlike most things in the transaction, inspections can be paid however you're able to pay. You can even have like mom or dad pay for your inspection. And so again, unlike things that are related to the financing piece, the inspection is completely unrelated to the financing. And so you can pay it usually by check, credit card. Sometimes, mom or dad brings a check too. So.
Okay, great. And I'll just say from the lending perspective, we don't order your home appraisal until the inspection is cleared because we don't want to have you spending money on an appraisal if the inspection doesn't clear. Hey, Travis, thanks for describing all that. Any other points that you want to cover before we go?
Yeah, there's one thing that I always like to tell home buyers and home sellers. This is very specific to Minnesota. The contingency allows the buyer to cancel the purchase agreement for any reason during the inspection period. So as a home buyer, you really want to know what that period is, if it's 3 days, 5 days, 7 days, what have you, because that piece is negotiable. But the standard language allows you to cancel for any reason without any loss. You don't even have to have inspected your home. It really allows you due diligence to check for insurances, to confirm interest rates with the lender, obviously to confirm the condition of the home. And then you can decide at that point if you're going to move forward or not. We should use the inspection in its totality. We should use that period to get all of our due diligence done before we commit to buying that house.
And I learned from you that is unique to Minnesota. If you're buying in other states, look up those states' rules. Would you agree?
Yeah, exactly. Even Wisconsin, I'm licensed in Wisconsin, it's completely different.
Okay, that's great. Well, thanks. And thanks for taking the time to be with us today, talking about home inspections and how they're different than home appraisals and why you should actually get one.
Yeah, hey, this video is just a high level on inspections and how they might be different from appraisals. If you want more information about inspections or curious, I could even get an example of an inspection, go ahead and reach out to me, shoot me a text, hit me up in the comment section. And as always, all my best to you and yours.